From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide, dive bombing.
If you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not going to get hurt. Bounce and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know, it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Robert White. Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
I'm Logan Seavey, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. 2022 was a very exciting year as we were able to take the show to MAVTV, and we kicked it off with guns blazing. Some of the biggest names in all of motorsports managed to come in here and join us in the Fatheads Eyewear studio. So we're going to bring you some of that action here as we get ready to kick off full swing in racing season for 2023. Enjoy. We'll start it off with the 3-time NASCAR champ, Mr. Tony Stewart. We're having a great time here in the studio. Speedway, Indiana is where it's all going down. Welcome back to The Skinny. Rico Elmore sitting alongside. Michael Young back over there, keeping us honest as well. And, of course, Tony Stewart sitting inside the studio. We just learned how to move a Corvette off of a parking spot that's loaded with ice. Care to refresh?
Well, I back when I started in IRL, I finally splurged a little bit when I got a nice contract and bought myself a very used late 80s model Corvette, and had an ice storm in the apartment complex we were at, and it had filled around the tires. So we put it in gear and just sat there and couldn't go anywhere because you couldn't get over the hump to get moving. But I had the door open, driver's door open, had it in reverse, revved the throttle up to get the wheels spinning, and then got in front of it, got it pushed out. There was nobody in the lot because everybody else had made it to work. But got it out and grabbed the door and then slid in the ice till it slowed down and swung myself in and got it stopped and got out and got going.
So the real question is, you're in an ice storm, you're in a Corvette. Where did you really go after that?
Wherever I needed to, but I just had to get out of the parking lot of the apartment complex. But yeah, it wasn't the most well thought out purchase I made, but man, it felt really cool to have a sports car.
Great stuff, man. He's got a ton of them for sure. Let me ask you a question. One of the few people, are you the only one that's won a NASCAR championship? 3 of them, by the way. And an IndyCar championship?
I believe so.
And for sure the only one that's also won Triple Crown and a couple Chili Bowls go along with it. So definitely unique whenever it comes to everything that you've done. Do you think we'll see it again? What do you think the chances are Kyle Larson at some point gets in an IndyCar just because it's there?
That's the one person that I would say would have a shot to do it. I mean, that kid is unbelievable. He's just a plug-and-play guy. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't know hardly anything about his race car. He just knows how to drive. And it doesn't matter what it is. I'm telling you, the kid could fly the space shuttle tomorrow. Just line it up, put him in it, tell him what to do, and he'll go and could execute it. But it doesn't matter what he drives. I mean, he's one of the best I've ever seen.
Were you surprised when he got back under the sprint car circuit and accomplished what he did?
Not at all.
Really?
I mean, that's his strength.
Unbelievable.
I mean, that's where he is legitimately strongest. I mean, he's a good cup driver, but he's a great sprint car driver. I mean, that is his home. That's his foundation. That's where he is at the most peace and comfort is in the wing sprint car.
I want to say he won 50% of his races that year.
Yeah.
It was some phenomenal
number. He was on a tear.
And he's driving a stock car at the same time and a midget and all that.
Late model.
Yeah.
I mean, and different owners. I think that was the other key. It wasn't like it was the same team. He was in different cars, but the result was always the same.
Yeah, there's a common denominator in all those variables.
And you're telling me he's really not that mechanical, so he doesn't come back in and say, the car's tight here, or we need to do this, or we need to do that?
He may give input on what he's feeling out there, but the crew chiefs are doing the work. I mean, Paul Silva does an amazing job running him. I mean, Paul's probably had the most success with him, but even Paul will tell you, he doesn't know he's a race car, but he doesn't have to. I mean, he's just that good. And if he can give the right information to the crew chiefs and let them do their job, I mean, he's put himself with good teams that can help him get those results.
So put him inside of an Indy car and we see the same success?
I think you would. I mean, I think it might be a little rough go. I mean, he might tear something up initially, but when he figures it out, I think he'd be great at it. I mean, he's one of those guys that just has that natural ability to get in any kind of race car and figure it out.
Stick around. Coming up next will be the 2016 Indianapolis 500 winner, Alexander Rossi.
Or James, Joseph, even Townsend. But we were a top 5 car, I think. But yeah, it was funny. We were struggling so much to get fuel in the car that the reason the strategy came to be was like Brian Herta said, well, pitting's not working for us, so we should just try and not. Just let's do that.
How do we do that one?
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear studio here in Speedway, Indiana. We have Alexander Rossi inside of the studio with us, the only driver that I'm aware of who has won the Baja 1000, has won the 24 Hours of Daytona, and has won the Indianapolis 500. If we go back and talk about that Baja race, I know you really enjoyed being out there in the desert, by the way, representing Honda. But that 2018 Baja 1000 was a special year with a little oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
What's up with that, dude?
This is only a race that could exist in Mexico. Like, it's still the Wild West out there in so many forms. And they have made it substantially safer than it used to be. But it's still not at all remotely safe, which is kind of why it's so awesome. And it's such a challenge to win. Obviously, you're racing. Basically, the way it works is there's a course that's close to 1,000 miles. And within that course, there are some checkpoints that you have to go through, and there are some virtual checkpoints you have to go through. But sometimes there's 15, 20, 30, 40 miles between checkpoints into which you can do whatever you want. Like, you can follow the course, or if you think you can find a faster way, you can also do that. And that can involve going through villages or on the beach or over mountains or through river, like whatever you want, like whatever you think your truck is capable of doing.
There's no authorities there that say you can't go this way.
Correct. Right. And so that's part of why it's so awesome. However, you can come across situations where there's oncoming traffic. This was actually a part of the published course, and I was coming over a jump, and there was just a Jeep Grand Cherokee going the other direction. And technically, they were doing nothing wrong because it was a public open road. They didn't close the roads. He's insane because had we hit him, we probably would have been fine, but he would have been in a different kind of situation. But yeah, came over the crest in the air in a 9,000-pound trophy truck, clipped his mirror, landed, and knew nothing about it. I only knew that happened once I got out of the truck, and people were like,
holy, so you never saw him?
Never saw him.
So you're looking so
my
far
horizon
out.
was the
yes.
sky.
Okay.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Oh my God, I didn't realize you didn't see him at all.
Not even the slight, which is good because that would have scared me.
Well, you would have had to stop and
I
exchange.
would think so.
You would have had to stop and exchange information too.
Yeah, and underwear.
But I mean, it's insane.
I don't want to miss out on talking about 2016 effort. Your rookie year, obviously in the Indianapolis 500, and buddies, as I spot for Dixon in turn 3, I've been buddies with Jason Burgess forever, and obviously you can't spot and not know Dwayne, so both of you spotters there are great friends of mine. So had a chance to pick their brains a little bit, but they said going back really to about the midway point is when that strategy started to take place. And I found it funny with what Jason Burgess said. He said the fact that he was a rookie, I think, really helped him, meaning the fact that he didn't have any pre-notions of what to do or what to expect, the less he knew in this particular instance, I think helped him.
100%. I was talking to someone about this a couple weeks ago, and there was two things. So one, I went into that race with zero pressure because it was my second oval race I'd ever done. right? My first on a super speedway. I was just trying to get through 500 miles to like tick the box and we'll come back next year and apply what we learned type thing. So I went into it super relaxed. And then you're exactly right. During the event, like naivety was bliss. Like, yeah, it was going bad. Things weren't working out. They asked me to do this fuel number and it was like, okay, well, I guess this is the Indy 500. Like
this is part of
I
it.
didn't know this wasn't good, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think
Never mind
Jason,
the fact that I'm going 200, 210 miles an hour. But
yeah, no, I think Jason's completely right. However, someone asked me a really interesting question, and they were like, do you wish that if you had a time machine, you could every year go into a 500 as a rookie? And the answer was no, because that year we shouldn't have won that race. And I'm the first to say that. We were not the fastest car, right? But there's been years since then, 2017, 2019, 2020, where I do feel like we had a legitimate shot to win. And when you're in that situation, you need to have the tools of previous years' experience to win that race. Had it been 2016 and I was in like a knife fight with someone to win that race, I wouldn't have had any chance.
Yeah, and
right?
that's what Jason said. He said, if he was in a knife fight, I don't know that he wins it.
No.
He did, however, counteract what you said just a little bit. He said, a lot of people don't realize this. He said, but you guys had a couple, you were struggling, I think, with the fuel fill. And he said you had a couple of tough pit stops. But he said you came out after those and you had to make it some time. And he said you ran 6 of the top 10 fastest laps of the race.
Yeah, no, we had a good car. Don't get me wrong. And we were, a lot of people forget the fact that we qualified 11th. We only missed the Fast 9 because of a weird kind of situation that happened. So like we were good that month. But certainly I don't think we had the strength of Hunter Ray or James, Joseph, even Townsend. But we were a top 5 car, I think. But yeah, it was funny. We were struggling so much to get fuel in the car that the reason the strategy came to be was like Brian Herta said, well, pitting's not working for us, so we should just try and not. Just let's do that.
Why do we do that one?
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. So he had the engineers like work out that situation. How are we not going to pit? How are we going to end this on one less pit stop than everyone else?
When we come back, well, it was a little premature because he had not run the race yet. But it was Ron Capps who won the U.S. Nationals. We'll hear from him in just a moment. Is there one trophy that you're missing?
Yeah, Indianapolis. Well,
hey, he's bringing up all the highlights for you.
Be careful
today.
when you walk in the studio, start kicking, man. We're having a great time here in Speedway, Indiana. We're just down the road from that place called Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but if you go west a little bit, there's this place called the Drag Strip that everybody goes to, and it's the largest drag race of the year called the U.S. Nationals that Ron Capps is in town for. He's certainly looking forward to that one. As we talk about you being second on the all-time win list, 2-time champion, is there one trophy that you're missing?
Yeah, Indianapolis. Well,
hey, he's bringing up all the highlights for you.
Be careful
today.
when you walk in the studio, start kicking, man.
I've won at the track many times, and I've won all-star races. We won the Big Butt Shootout. I've won makeup races. I won the COVID race that we had at the at Indianapolis track, but never won the U.S. Nationals on Monday. And I'm one of the few that has won at every track on the NHRA Tour. I'm not sure how many there are, but that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do, right?
Absolutely.
So that just tells you all the talented people I've been around in my career. But it's always eluded me. That Monday, U.S. Nationals, and I've been close. We almost won it last year, and Tim Wilkerson went like this and threw a tune-up in it, and he'll tell you the same thing, and we call it getting wilked because he absolutely shocked us, shocked himself, shocked everybody in the grandstands, and whooped us in the final round. And I thought that was one of the few times I thought we got this. We had lane choice. We were going in. There was no way he was going down that lane, and that's drag racing for you. He completely took it away from us.
You know, we talked about it with Matt Hagan. Obviously, Tony Stewart coming in as a new team owner. Hagan comes in here second in the points, a handful of wins. He's going to have a shot at this championship. You've already clinched. You come in here third in the points. As a new team owner of your own, you have a shot at this championship as well. You've not skipped a beat, man. I mean, we talked about how difficult this is for you to start what you've done in 2022, but you're doing awesome.
Yeah, and it was quick. We had to make a lot of big decisions quickly. We announced it at PRI here in Indy, and I had to make a lot of really brash, crazy decisions before the season started because unlike next year where it's going to start, NHRA season will start in Gainesville in March instead of the Winter Nationals in L.A., and we'll have more room. I had to get everything together and have a team. I already had Dean Antonelli, Guido, and John Medler, and the same team we won the championship last year with. But we decided to stay with DSR parts, the same cars, and I made a deal with Don Schumacher to be able to lease back the same stuff that we ran the year before. So that, I think, was crucial to us hitting the ground running because the very first race, we were number one qualifier, and then we almost won the race. We came about this close from winning low qualifier and sweeping the whole race. And Robert Height ended up beating us in the final, but I thought, wow, what a great start.
Oh, my goodness.
And I never thought that we would be that good that quick, with a little bit of growing pains. But and it's been great. We ended up winning in Vegas, and then we gave Toyota the Super Body its first win in Bristol. So a lot of cool things that's gone on besides just being a team owner and trying to block out the team owner stuff when I get in the car has been probably the biggest thing. But I think I've grown a lot this season in trying to do that. And it's been a work in progress at times. But I couldn't ask for a better start. And we're already gearing up for next year as we speak on what we're going to do with, where we're going to be and what teams and what parts and all that stuff.
Does Guido have the box or does John have the box?
Guido,
yeah.
Oh, no,
yeah.
John.
John has the
shutout, yeah.
John
shutout.
has the
Yeah.
box because Guido is like, shut it. He's like trying to
explain what that is for the fans that are watching that aren't familiar with it.
And Ron could probably, what they have, the shut off on the line, so.
Yeah. There's many times we'll make a run, and it's just a box with a button. And if it puts a cylinder out and I'm ahead on race day, they can save me from having to leg that thing down there and possibly blow it up. But it's an electronic box that they can hit the button at any given time and shut my car off. And it's a good thing. There's sometimes not a good thing. But in qualifying, if you're already qualified well, and I don't quite know, there's some weird flames going out the side because I can't see them, they can certainly shut it off and save parts. So for rookies and new guys in funny cars and girls, it's been really good. It saves oil down, saves a lot of cleanup time.
How long has that been around?
Not long.
I think it's been around a long time, just not in this sport. From
in
my early days of doing Monster Jam, they always had one of those remotes to shut monster trucks off in case a driver was to knock himself out or just get out of control. They'd shut that truck off. And I'm wondering if it's that technology that worked its way in.
Dave Leahy, who comes up with a lot of cool stuff like that, the automatic shut-off that's past the finish line, if fans may not know, when we go past a certain point, there is a beam shot across each lane, and we have a transmitter on each car. And if the car blows up and I'm unconscious, that beam, if I haven't shut the fuel off on my own at that point or gotten my parachutes out, that beam will automatically put the chutes out and shut my fuel off.
Wow.
And it saved me a couple times where I've had explosions and I was unconscious. So that was a good thing. And then later on, and Dave Leahy did come up with that. He works for Jim Head. And so later on he came up. But that's a good question. I want to ask him if it did come off that technology because as soon as you said that, I remembered seeing and hearing about the monster trucks. And
if you take a look at that, typically there's two monster trucks out there, so they have a left and right lane. So they would have distinguishing lights. I want to say red or green or something like that. But both drivers would have to put their hands out, and they would shut the truck off before they launched them to make sure that they were functioning. Of course, every single pairing, whenever they went to do that. So I'm kind of curious too. But I had no idea they had something that I knew that they had something that would shut you guys down if you went too far, but I had no idea it would actually deploy the chutes as well. That's incredible.
It's kind of like they shut you down at the go-kart track.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of the same concept.
Huh. I've never heard that happen to me.
Yeah, sure you haven't.
When we come back, we'll feature the three-time NHRA Funny Car champ and now driver for Tony Stewart, Matt Hagan.
Actually, the people hang them up in the rear views for good luck, And he was like, "What do you mean that's a raccoon, Peter?" And I was like, "That's a raccoon, man." Like what? He's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna go shake everybody's hand I don't like after I've touched all that."
Welcome back to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. That is Rico Elmore. We have Michael Young behind the controls here with us today. And, of course, Matt Hagan sitting alongside. Great to have him in the studio. I've got to ask you about the camaraderie. When you're with Tony Stewart now, of course, things are new and everybody's learning, but as long as you were with Don Schumacher, that team that Rico had talked about in the previous segment, that nucleus, and not just those guys, but the entire field of NHRA competitors in the pro level, you guys are all rubbing shoulders with each other, and to me, that's some of the coolest part of the sport.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, everybody loves everybody out there. I mean, until we pull a helmet on. But it's just, you know, the camaraderie. We just had so much fun together. Like, we're always cutting up and always joking around. And like we were just talking about Antron. And a funny story on Antron, there was this, we were in Bristol, which is kind of like, you know, my town in the woods. And it's kind of, you know, backwoods, rednecks, you know, and stuff like that. And so this guy comes over and he gives Antron a necklace. And he's like, this thing's lucky, you know, and it's like fish wire and it's just a bone on there. And I knew what it was right away, you know what I mean? And Antron was like, oh, man, this is great. And he's looking at it and, you know, rubbing on it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to rub on it for good luck and stuff, you know. And I pulled Antron to the side. I said, you know what that is, man? And he's like, no, man, I have no idea, you know. And I said, well, that's a raccoon, Peter. I said, you know, they do that around here. They skin them out and pull them off, and they make a necklace. People hang them up in their rear views for good luck, you know. And he was like, what do you mean that's a raccoon, Peter? And I was like, that's a raccoon, man. like what? He's like, oh my God. He's like, well, I'm gonna go shake everybody's hand I don't like after I've touched all that, you know? Yeah,
that is him, man. We had him on the show when it was a podcast a couple of years ago, and man, that dude has so much energy. He's just a great guy to be around.
Yeah, he is, man. We have a lot of fun, but yeah, that's a story from Antron that sticks out. He had no idea, and you know, and people they just do it for good luck. It's an old wise tale kind of thing, and yeah, you never know what you're going to get from fans.
I'm with him. I wouldn't have known either, man. I don't know that I've ever seen one of those.
I'd have probably been rubbing on it too.
Yeah, you never know what you get with fans. Fans give you all kinds of wild stuff, you know, but that's what's been great about being out here is our fan engagement and being able to interact with them and do cool stuff and just the stuff that people go out of their way to be nice and do for you. I mean, I guess that's why Force has a museum of stuff to put things in, you know. It's just I don't know what you do with it all sometimes, you know.
I know that Tony, you know, one of Tony's big things, you know, you guys all operate out of the same building out on South Point Circle in Brownsburg, and you know, the thing that I love watching with Tony, it's like him taking on this challenge is much like the way he took on the challenge of being a cup owner, you know, and he was all in. You guys were pretty set coming over. You know, you got Dickie, which is probably one of the best tuners out there on the tour, has been, always will be. And then, you know, you've got the other team that, you know, Neil and those guys, they all had to build it.
Yeah.
You know,
it
was just kind of start from scratch. But to do all of that work in the off season and come out, and, you know, everybody's like, geez, what's wrong with Leah? She's not. I'm like,
it'll come. It just takes time.
Settle down.
It takes time. It takes laps, you know. And
settle down, kids. Yeah. It's coming, you know. And,
yeah. You know, and that's what I kept, you know, kind of reiterating to a lot of people that would say that is just like nothing happens overnight, you know, and especially in a fuel car. It takes seat time. It takes runs for the crew chief. It takes building that confidence with each other as a team. And, you know, and that's what me and Dickie have done over the last 8 to 10 years. You know, we built a lot of confidence in each other. You know, I mean, he feels like I'm a good leaver, and sometimes he doesn't have to push as hard to get the track, you know, go down the track. And if I can give him 2 on the tree, and he doesn't have to run too hard or to win the race, you know, I mean, we can go down the racetrack and race smart a lot of times and different things like that. But that trust is that you earn. Trust is earned. You know, it's not given. And as a team, you have to earn everyone's trust, and they have to earn yours. And you know, and that takes time to do that. You know, and but once it's there, it's a bond that's solid. And you know, like I don't even think about getting in the car whether it's put together right or not. And my guys have saved me so many times of finding like a broke chassis or a piece that's bad or something that would have caused me to crash. You know, and you know, so I really feel like, you know, I trust what they're doing and the time that they take to put the car together and look over it, and that's a confidence, and that's one less thing in my mind. And you know, so having a group together like we've had, it's hard to do because people love to move around, or they get offered more money, or this or that, or so it's hard to keep your core guys together, and we've been able to do that for the last 8 to 10 years with this group, and I think that's why we're always in the hunt. We're always 1, 2, or 3, and and just right there digging and doing what we need to do for our sponsors. But it's tough to keep that together and keep it going because people move in different directions a lot of times, and it's a rotating carnival circus out here with NHRA, man. I mean, you got crew guys jumping from Forces to Iris to Petrogons to wherever, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of, it's chaotic and hectic, but you got to have a good core there to bring, to train the guys to do what they need to do.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with one of the most iconic voices of all time in motorsports, Mr. Paul Page.
At ESPN, and they said, we got this new series. It's not really a series. It was going to be a one-timer. And we'd like you to host it because you have a sense of humor and can handle these kind of things, which is kind of where they used me a lot of the time. And so there I am. I'm doing the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And the very first one, they started the event. Now they just, count down and say go. But then they said, gentlemen, start your enzymes. So it was fun.
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. That's Rico Elmore, the track dude, heavily involved in this one as well, as he's been friends with Paul Page for many, many years. Paul Page, a Grammy-winning broadcaster who has covered much more than motorsports, and a couple of those items which we had the pleasure of having him on the show before this became a TV show, but a couple of things that jumped out at me were speed skating. You said you really enjoyed that. You said you enjoyed America's Cup, and the technology in there really blew you away. But let's face it, when you're winning Grammys, it's got to be the Nathan's hot dog contest that really put you on the map.
I think those are Emmys, but okay.
Oh, Emmys? Okay.
I'd like to win a Grammy. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But
no, it's all good. I would take the Grammy.
Well, you were obviously heavily impressed with that long list of obscure events. Yeah, Nathan's, they called me one day at ESPN, and they said, we got this new series. It's not really a series. It was going to be a one-timer. And we'd like you to host it because you have a sense of humor and can handle these kind of things, which is kind of where they used me a lot of the time. And so there I am. I'm doing the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And the very first one, they started the event. Now they just, count down and say go. But then they said, gentlemen, start your enzymes. So it was fun. And it was popular. And it became a 4th of July tradition. I did, I think, 13 years of it.
Wow.
And it was a hoot. It was a really good gig because you also, at the end of the day, I book like an 8 o'clock flight home out of Kennedy. And the reason I picked that time, even though the event was over by about 2, was in that time, if the sky was clear, you could see all the fireworks down below you all the way home. It was really...
I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sure you've experienced as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So what years was it? What years was Nathan's, I'm sorry.
I want to say 2005 as a starter. It all jumbles up, but I've been in too many different jobs.
Yeah.
So was Joe? Who was the star of the show then?
Well, there was this Japanese eater named is Kobayashi.
Yep.
And but that was his last year, and then we got Joey Chestnut, who was basically won all of them ever since then. Who lives, by the way, up on the north side of Indianapolis.
Who would have guessed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because he always does the shrimp eating contest, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For St. Elmo's or whatever,
Right.
and yeah. I guess I didn't know that he lived up there. I want to know
Well,
what's
that's a
going
new thing.
on
Most
up there.
people don't know that. That's really new.
He's gonna get like stalked now. People gonna,
So did you find yourself intrigued? I mean, coming out of the motorsports world, you knew how important little tricks of the trade are to win any sort of motorsports event, and the same rules apply when it comes to eating hot dogs. They have tricks of the trade.
Yeah, I had to go to the pits and find out the story from the competitors up front. Each of them has a special drink One of them might like iced tea, one of them might Kool-Aid, because that's what they dump the dog into.
Well, and they soak the bread, right?
They soak the whole thing, and then they throw it in their mouth. So that was important, finding out what each guy, what their favorite was in the cup. Joey, for one, chews 5 pieces of gum at a time to strengthen up the jaw. That you can overcome your gag reflex with training. And so they'd work very hard at doing that as well. They take it seriously.
Oh, yeah. And how many hot dogs were they consuming? Do you remember?
Oh, I think the record is, 78.
Oh, my God.
But they didn't have, and that's 10 minutes.
I think I've got this laid out. The next business meeting I have to go to, I'm going to try to rent him. And introduce him as someone else. And let him come in there and just start smashing hot dogs. They'll never forget that meeting.
No, that would be good.
How would they forget that?
We in the Monster Jam shows, we had an entertainer, short of basically like a rodeo clown, if you will. And during intermission or between classes, he would come out and do some stuff to entertain the crowd. And one of the things he would do was a banana eating contest. Mm-hmm. And he would structure it so whoever won the deal would end up eating 4. If not, trying to work on the 5th banana. And let me tell you something. Eating 4 bananas is no easy task. So if they wanted to cut the hot dog eating contest in half, they could go to bananas because for whatever reason, man, it fills you up fast.
But racing had their deal. Whenever we'd go to Ontario, now Fontana, right off of Archibald there going to the Ontario airport, it was a, this is good. Hamburgers, California hamburgers.
In-N-Out burger.
In-N-Out. Thank you very much. Home brain.
Well, we all know that one.
And we'd have a contest after the race. A bunch of the guys would go in there and see who could eat the most. The key being, you had to keep it down. And I think one guy got 5, and there was no time limit, but 5 was amazing.
Yeah.
Double garbage was.
Yeah. I could only do 5 or 6, but I get it. It sounds like a big deal.
But that was after a long night.
after a long night, and I didn't know I was even doing it. So
it's such fun stuff, and the events that you cover as you're a house guy for the network. So. Much like, you see Lee Diffie these days, you'll see him covering the Olympics, of course, or wherever it is that they happen to send him. Now, fortunately for him, that's still racing. I would find that very exciting. But as a house guy, you take the phone call. The last thing you say as a broadcaster is no.
Yeah, your contract is written, mine was, and most of them were on 32 events a year. And, well, there aren't 32 racing events, so they wanted to fill up the others. So they'd send me to all this sumo wrestling, and I did the Rubik's Cube Championship, World Championship, from the Opera Hall in Budapest, for example. But the good news about that was you got to travel. They'd send you. I've been places I never would have thought I'd go to, and just because you had that opportunity.
When we come back, we'll feature an off-road motorsports Hall of Famer and Baja 1000 winner, Mr. Cameron Steele.
And I think the people appreciate it. And yes, I call people out for squirreling out in the corners. They drop some nuts there for the squirrels to gather up. Maybe some drivers don't like that. There's times back in the days when I announced Supercross where I'd go down on the track walk the day before and some of the big riders wouldn't want to talk to me because the week before I said something, but always in pure truth.
We have a great set down here in the VIP bar area of Crandon International Raceway this week for the Skinny. Ken Stout, Rico Elmore, and Cameron Steele sitting alongside. We've talked about Cameron's accomplishments behind the wheel of a race car, but did you realize that he's also a very talented surfer? Yeah, he's been living in Southern California for a number of years.
My whole life.
And very close to the beach.
Yep, actually, true story. I was born in San Francisco, moved to South Orange County by the time I was a wee one. And so I've spent most of my entire life that I can remember in South Orange County. So yes, I did ride waves for a living. Rode on the U.S. tour as a professional bodyboarder for 6 years, I think. Surfed at the Pipeline event or bodyboarded at the Pipeline event 5 times. Highest placing non-Hawaiian once. So those are some stats that I love. But, more importantly, I think, just all around being able to be a part of that action sports transition. X Games started happening. I had basically left Supercross racing and I was going to kind of hang up the motorcycle. And then all of a sudden there was this freestyle thing, and I started hitting the ramps, going to the hills and jumping. And although I wasn't very good at that either, that's how they found me as the mouth of freestyle motocross, and ended up announcing for 18 years of X Games. So that was really great. And I still work with X Games now. I started in 99. My shows like Rip to Cabo and Trail of Missions are actually on World of X Games still. So I'm still technically an X Games commentator. I started in 98, so that's 24 years of commentating with ESPN and the X Games.
Yeah, you had to see some unbelievable stuff.
Unbelievable. Oh my God. I was there the day that they first lit off the motorcycles on the pier in San Francisco. So they never had dirt bikes before, and they had all the other sports, and everybody was practicing. There's fans everywhere. They started the bikes, and I was up in the tower, the announce tower, and it just was a mad rush of humans all came flying over because no one knew what to expect. That same weekend, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Hawk landed the 900. And so I got to become friends and be around great athletes. Dave Mira, who's now passed, unfortunately. So many great freestyle motocross riders. I was able to host surfing at the X Games for a couple years. Just, the trajectory of life is interesting. You know, I did sports as a youngster, and then all of a sudden I was able to commentate them. But through that, I've been able to proliferate being an off-road racer the entire time. And that's what's been the greatest thing, is I've been able to stick to my roots of Baja, which is my first love. You know, I outside of my wife and kids, there's nothing I love more than being on the Baja Peninsula. And all the things that I've done have afforded me the ability to go there and have some personality and some clout, and the sponsors appreciate it. And, you know, being a sponsored person is not easy, but it sure gives us a glorious opportunity.
Yeah, you know, you've always spoke well. Of course, helps keep you in the seat, but your attention to detail, your mindset as being a competitor, and then knowing what that's like and being able to relay that to the fans at home is something that you're in your own lane. You have a unique language, a Cameron Steele language, if you will, and the words that you choose, and when you choose them, it makes you somebody a little different and special, but you're so easy to understand, and I think you really relay.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Ken. Thank you. And working with you for a decade or more has been awesome. Sometimes I think it costs me work too. Sometimes I think some people think I'm too relaxed, and I don't always want to go to the meetings. I don't always write the notes, but I kind of like let it fly, and I take it all in. And I try to give this great
California cool. I don't always want to go to the meetings.
Yeah, I just have this kind of weird innate ability to talk about what I'm seeing and remember all these stats. Not like you're the stat man, but I feel like I can remember all these different things that happened over the years and push them into the content loosely. And I think that people appreciate it. And yes, I call people out for squirreling out in the corners. They drop some nuts there for the squirrels to gather up. Maybe some drivers don't like that. There's times back in the days when I announced Supercross where I'd go down on the track walk the day before, and some of the big riders wouldn't want to talk to me because the week before I said something, but always in pure truth, and never trying to be mean in any way, but always speaking the truth. And I think that that's what the fans appreciate, you know?
It's great to watch because that's the excitement of it, especially somebody that's been there, done that, or is so entrenched in it, you know, that they actually know the ins and outs, what people are doing, why they did what. And Tony Stewart, another great friend, you know, on the telecast for Fox, they brought him in for that reason. You know what I mean? To lay it out there, and I think it's a great style. So
I do too, but I also think that there's a spot for commentators that weren't athletes, and there's been some great ones along the years that I think that have become almost more of an expert in some ways in their sports than the drivers themselves that come up to the booth. So there's a few that Todd Harris, I think, is an incredible commentator for Supercross and sport. Someone who didn't ride the sport, but someone who really loved it and embraced it and made it happen. I mean, those people are so important to the sport because they carry the show, they carry it, and they tee up that expert. You know, without someone that knows it and has heart for it to tee up that expert, it doesn't ever work.
That's why we got Stout.
I think Ken, I would say, I mean, without just because you're sitting here, I don't want to say it, but you're probably the best commentator I've ever worked with. most stats in your head, most memory, know all the athletes that you're working with, have been down in the dirt, whether you race on the track or not. You're down there paying attention and understanding it. I would say, bar none, best partner I've ever had.
And we'll close the show out here in just a couple of moments with arguably the most popular name in all of motorsports, Mr. Mario Andretti.
You know, Aldo and I have such a burning passion and desire to pursue this. And when we arrived in America in '55, age 15, 2 years later, we assembled 4 other buddies. You know, I always say we're the usual geek that knows everything, because we didn't know anything.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Ken Stout with you, Rico Elmore alongside Michael Young back behind the controls. We also have Greg Hunter with us as well, shadowing Michael. So when Michael goes off on vacation like he did last week, we can continue on. We appreciate that, Greg. And of course, the man that's in the studio with us here this week is none other than Mario Andretti. And we certainly appreciate his time. Everybody's always tugging at his shirt tails for sure to try and get some time. But doing a little bit of research on you, you know, obviously I don't want to say everybody's familiar with your racing accomplishments, but they all understand how talented you are. But I did not realize what your parents had to go through back when you were very, very young before you came here to the States. You and your brother Aldo, of course, living in Montona, I believe is how it's pronounced, which is now part of Croatia. And then it was annexed by Yugoslavia at the end of World War II, and the Andretti family left in '48 during the Dalmatian exodus and ending up in a refugee camp in Lucca, Italy. Do you remember any of those days?
Well, of course. I mean, I lived there, again, the first 15 years of my life. And when we left our land of birth, if you will, Montona, which is inside the peninsula of Istria, I was already 8 years of age, and we became refugees in our own country. Really, when that area was annexed to Yugoslavia, which is hardline communism, Marshal Tito, and so forth, we had to, make it. My dad, obviously, my parents had to make a decision, either to succumb to hardline communism or just leave him and keep our Italians. Citizenship and so forth, and again, just leave everything behind. That's what thousands and thousands of the people of that area that left. It's estimated close to 200,000 people in that area that left, and I found those people all over the world, just traveling and racing Formula One, and it's the people migrated to Argentina, to Brazil, to Australia, to New Zealand, and on and on. Aldo and my dreams began while we were still there in Italy. I said this a million times because in the 50s, especially the early 50s, Italy was so prominent in Formula One with Ferrari, Maserati, that's Alfa Romeo, and Italian present world champions. This is where my passion began. Aldo and I just started following the sport, through either magazines or even newsreels, in the movies that they would show, live newsreels. And we saw our very first race, first big race in Monza in 1954 at age 14. And the mold was cast. From there on, in our own mind, at least, there was no plan B. Aldo and I have such a burning passion and desire to pursue this. And when we arrived in America in '55, age 15, 2 years later, we assembled 4 other buddies. I always say we're the usual geek that knows everything, because we didn't know anything. And then we started. We started building a car to race locally here in Nazareth. There was a nice half-mile dirt track, modified sportsman cars, and And that's how I started. 2 years later, age 19, Aldo and I started racing. One car, two drivers. We used to alternate 1 week. We used to race 3 different tracks here in each weekend. And that's it. My career technically started in '59 and was never interrupted, until officially I came out of the open cockpit in 1994. So I had a great span.
2022 was a great year, and we're glad we kicked things off with the Skinny. 2023 is going to be even better. We have a whole lineup of some of the absolute best. We'll bring you the Skinny right here on MAVTV.